Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, video games. I can't deny, they have shaped a big portion of my life for the last 16 years. And I can't say I'm not grateful for it. Over the years, games made me laugh, cry, scream until I popped a few blood vessels, and everything in between. I love the games I play so much. In fact, one of the big reasons I Let's Play is to showcase all the games that I love. And it's going great so far. In fact, now that we're taking a small break from the Let's Plays, I'd like to give you a small glimpse of all 20. Yes, my top 20 favorite video games of all time. Sit back and enjoy.
And before we get started, let me just preface this real quick. This is my top 20. This is not the end-all be-all top 20. This is my personal list. And throughout this list, I'm going to be analyzing and giving reasons exactly as to why they're in my top 20. And all of them do have very good reasons. So, just pay attention to that and remember, this is not a general opinion, this is mine. Okay, here we go. I first played Super Mario Galaxy back when it came out in 2007. At the time, I was severely blinded by my nostalgia for Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario 64, and the fact that I had heard so many negative things about the Nintendo Wii in general, so I didn't give it much of a fair shot. It wasn't until roughly 4 years later that I gave it that chance, and boy am I glad I did. Super Mario Galaxy was as pure as a 3D platformer could get, and it boggled my mind how much a simple mechanic such as the spin move could completely change the game experience, and for the better at that. On top of that, aside from the constant theme of space, though not prevalent in every galaxy, each level was incredibly diverse, and the graphics were top of the class for the constantly underappreciated Wii console. To this day, I'd still say it's one of the best looking games we got out of the 7th generation. And there's more. The soundtrack was bombastic and fun, and even the story was a little touching. I can safely say that this was one of, if not my most very favorite game on the Nintendo Wii. My first experience with the Bioshock series was in the house of a junior high friend, back when I still thought it was considered a sin to even touch an M-rated game. I even felt guilty, because it looked so fun, I wanted it. That was the first, however, and even though I did find out it had later gone on to win dozens of Game of the Year awards and is still highly praised to this day, I didn't actually play an entry in the series until just over a year ago. That game was the second entry, Bioshock 2. At first I expected a horror-based first-person shooter with lots of gore like I had always been told it was, but I came to realize it was so much more than that. The story was fantastic and gripping. I was actively in pursuit of my goal at all times, and each moment kept me on the edge of my seat. I cared for the little sisters too. Sure, it helped that they looked oh so much more adorable in this game as compared to the first, but it helped my drive. And although the ending isn't quite as controversial and surprising as the first, or even Infinite, I still think that this game is one of the most underrated games of all time, and gave me a better experience than any game in Take-Two's highly praised franchise. The indie game scene never ceases to amaze me. While I'm not a huge fan of most big successes such as Braid and Castle Crashers, every year or so, a game is produced that leaves me floored. In 2013, that game was the Unfinished Swan. My first time playing it was right here on this channel, funny enough, but I finished it a few times since then, and I cannot even begin to get over the charm that this title exudes. While it isn't long, the heartfelt storytelling and presentation, along with the unique game-defining mechanics, make it an adventure worth experiencing. Though it doesn't take anyone older than the age of 5 to comprehend what's happening in the plot, and the gameplay itself is fairly easy to grasp, that doesn't retract from the game at all. In some ways, it even enhances it. What's better, Giant Sparrow still has 2 more games to release in their 3-game contract with Sony, so here's hoping it only gets better. The Unfinished Swan, one of the best $15 purchases I ever made. From the time I first saw a Street Fighter arcade cabinet, I had always wanted to learn how to play classic fighting games. Though I was restricted to the Super Smash series for most of my life, I finally got around to it a few years ago. I wasn't picky, I just wanted to play something, and that lucky series for me was Tekken. Though I've spent a lot of my time with Tekken Revolution, the free-to-play version exclusive to the PS3, Tag Tournament 2 is the same thing, but with more features and less money laundering, being a disc-based game, and for that, I would say it's the better. I have come to love the fighting genre because of it, since purchasing every game in the main Tekken series. The fighting style along with the combination of moves is what gets me. The combos aren't even the draw, though they can still be pretty effective. Most characters are so unique it's an entirely new game every time you decide to master one. Though Kazuya, Asuka, and Law are my mains, I will continue to play this game over and over until I've mastered every single one, because it keeps me coming back. I was born in 1993, and I completed my first ever video game in 1998. That game was the lost gem of a point-and-click called the Neverhood. Formed from the mind of Doug TenNapel, the man behind the Earthworm Jim series, this quirky and hilarious puzzle game is something else. While I didn't think much of it as a 4-year-old, playing it with my dad on occasion with our old 1997 compact desktop computer, I've since realized just how amazing this game was. The first-person to third-person switches, depending on the environments, did wonders for the presentation of the game, and the humor was on point all throughout. On top of that, the graphical style still holds up today due to the claymation look, and even offers plenty in the way of gags. The puzzles were and still are incredibly clever, some extremely memorable, and the story is a lot of fun. Although you'll be hard-pressed to find the game ever again, let alone run it without some piracy, it's one I highly recommend to anyone who can get their hands on it. It's a hidden treasure in an age of terrible, albeit revolutionary, point-and-click adventure games that we've all come to mock and parody to this day. I wanted to hate the Elder Scrolls series so much. Nobody stopped talking about it back in 2011. Nothing about it seemed appealing, and I actually despised the Fallout games, which everyone had told me was so similar to the Elder Scrolls in the way of mechanics, I just couldn't bring myself to try it. Luckily, I eventually watched a few videos regarding the game and got some proper insight, enough to warrant me buying it used at GameStop for $40. Roughly 400 hours of gameplay later, I had come to the conclusion that this game is amazing! While I will concede that the game is full of bugs, glitches, and flaws, the story is, for the most part, unimpressive, and it isn't the immersive experience it was hyped up to be. I fell in love with the game because, despite all of that, it's tons of fun. I wanted to explore everywhere. The environments to this day are some of the best that video games have to offer, and the map is huge, of course. But, even more importantly, I enjoyed playing through the quests. I enjoyed swinging my battle axe aimlessly at a horde of Draugr. I relished every moment I spent sneaking around and sniping people with my bow. I got a rush running from a cave bear that was 10 times stronger than me because I was gutsy and decided to ramp up the difficulty level mid-fight. And the score is magical. Skyrim is a great game, a fantastic game. Maybe not for the reasons everyone said it was upon release. Certainly not for the reasons Bethesda said it would be before release. But since I walked out of that GameStop with the game in hand, I can honestly say I've enjoyed every second of it. All 4,168,800 of them. I like Pokemon. A lot. I hope that's not a secret to anyone. I mean, look at my username. It's probably something that pertains to my interests. That being said, it's Pokemon Sapphire that I have played the most of, and enjoy more than any other in the series. Though, I'm placing Emerald on this list because I recognize it as the better and more expounded upon version. The Hoenn region is my absolute favorite, and my general like of the region's Pokemon far surpasses any other. For me, Pokemon games aren't necessarily better than the other for the reasons other games would be. I don't care for the story, the gameplay differences, or the graphics. That's not what I look for in each title. I look for the little quirks, and what game I sat down and found myself playing the most. The Battle Frontier, the Pokemon contests, the character designs, the memorable features, those are what make Pokemon Emerald number one in my mind. I played this game a lot as a kid. Heck, it's the whole reason I went out and bought myself a PlayStation 2. This game did native war matches correctly before anyone else had, and threw a fun twist on it all at once. It's possibly the best Star Wars game ever made next to Knights of the Old Republic, and to this day I still love playing it. Even though I've probably plugged over 50 hours into each and every map. Although it's featured as a third-person shooter, it can also be played in first-person, and it's a blast either way. All the different modes are tons of fun, and each level is incredibly creative. But my favorite part is just mowing down as many droids as I can within the time frame the match gives you. As far as native multiplayer goes, this might be the best there ever was, and that's saying a lot. And for those wondering why I placed this game above its predecessor, I never really did play the first game all that much, though I will concede it has the better level design of the two. It just doesn't hold quite the same place in my heart that this one does. It's time to get crazy. As a young teenage boy, shooters were what I wanted to play. Most people at my age were either playing Halo, Call of Duty, or Rainbow Six, but my introduction to the genre was Medal of Honor. I was given 3 of the games in a set for Christmas one year, but the reason I had wanted it in the first place was Medal of Honor Rising Sun. I played a lot of video games with my cousins growing up, but there is no doubt that this was by far the one we played the most. It had a fantastic multiplayer, and it was one of the only games at the time with 4-player maps and AI opponents on top of that. It also featured a sweet co-op story mode, or so I thought. I've since realized it's quite limited. The single-player campaign, however, is quite memorable, and although it hasn't aged well, I appreciate the environments of this game far above the rest. For that reason alone, I place it above my other favorite entry in the series, European Assault. I couldn't recommend this game to most people nowadays because this is nothing more than a nostalgia trip for me. I adore its age and its quirks every bit as much as I did when I was younger, and for that, it will forever remain one of my favorites. Heck yeah, it's the Bear and Bird, but they're back for a roaring sequel and man do I love it. I grew up on the Nintendo 64, and while most people had Super Mario 64 or the original Banjo-Kazooie in the way of platformers, I had this one. I even beat this game when I was just 9 years old at 100%, and I can tell you that even now, that is not an easy task. This is definitely on the list of rareware masterpieces if you were to ask any seasoned gamer, and in my book, it's at number 1. All it does is improve upon everything that Kazooie had, and I find each level to be equally as memorable, if not more. The jokes are more on point, the atmosphere is just as great, and it even has a freaking sweet multiplayer. I owe my love for adventure and platformer games to it as well. Banjo-Tooie is a classic, in every sense of the word.
But that is going to be it for this video. That is the first 10, 20 through 11. But join me next week where we'll count down my top 10 favorite video games of all time. See you guys then.